This is the number of human beings on the planet. Billions of people, and all of us different. But we do have one thing in common: our body. We're about to take a journey from conception to birth and beyond that will unearth some of our deepest secrets.
The process of conception, then, it just continues to amaze me.
Lay bare the incredible capabilities of our body.
Every cell in the human body is important and vital.
And revolutionize the way we think about ourselves.
At the end of the program, everybody watching it will be a different person.
You'll never look at your reflection the same way again after you've examined your body in numbers. Our body is constantly generating a wealth of fascinating statistics, numbers that both surprise and amaze. But most of the time, we're completely unaware of the phenomenal feats our body is pulling off. Not convinced? Well, how much blood does our heart pump every day?
I have no idea.
I don't know.
That's a good one.
That's a good question. I can't really answer that. I don't know.
The answer is thousands of gallons every single day. And that's what this series is all about. Decoding the body's vital statistics, laying bare the numbers that reveal how incredible our body is. But rather than just tell you what they are, we're going to show you what they are. For instance, this is the amount of sweat the average person will produce in a lifetime. 3,750 gallons, enough to fill all 548 of these buckets. This is the amount of new bone that you will grow, more than 12 bodies worth. And these bottles contain the total number of tears you will shed in your life, all 143 pints of them. But these are more than just eye-opening figures. They also reveal a story. It's the story of ourselves, our entire life's journey. In this episode, we'll follow the first steps along that journey, from the moment of conception to our first birthday, examining the key parts of our body as they develop. And it all starts with one of these. Can you see it? No? Okay, we'll magnify it 20 times. See it now? Not really. Okay, here it is 1,000 times bigger. This is a real cell from a real body. And it's only about 2/1000ths of an inch across. It's actually a brain cell. And it's one of the thousands of different cell types our body contains. Some give us energy, others help us sweat, and we're making millions of new ones every second. Because cells are so small, it can be a bit tough getting your head around the numbers involved. However, think about it a different way, and it all becomes clear. What if every cell in your body was a grain of sand? If that were the case, then the amount of cells you produce in just, say, 10 minutes would look something like this. Our body is generating around 300 million new cells every minute. And all those new cells are needed just to replace the ones we use up or wear out. But how many cells does our body contain in the first place? Well, if each were a grain of sand, then the number of cells in your body would look like this. Spread along this beach are not millions, not billions, but trillions of sand grains. In fact, the average person contains around 100 trillion cells, which if they were grains of sand, would make a beach a mile long. It might seem like a lot, but all of these cells doing millions of different jobs is exactly what makes us human.
The interesting thing is, of course, all of the cells in the body are generated from a single cell. And so the most, if you will, potent cell, the cell that can go in every conceivable direction, of course, is that initial cell.
That first cell, the one that will make us who we are, is only formed at the moment of conception. That's when all the information from our mother is added to that from our father to create our own biological plan, our individual DNA. But this just marks the beginning of the ultimate mystery. How will our life turn out? These parents have had 8 children together. But look at them in detail, and it's clear that their DNA has given them each their own distinctive features. In fact, their attributes, tastes, strengths, and weaknesses will distinguish them just as clearly as if each had different parents. So what about you? Who do you take after? Your mom or your dad?
Probably half and half, I would say. You know, when people see my mother, they think it's like a stamp image of my mother, but then they see my father and they go, wow, you know.
I have my dad's goofy sense of humor, and I'd like to think that my mom is pretty level-headed.
I'd say probably my mom. I look a lot more like her. She's really short too.
Personality traits come from my mother. I'm very loud and obnoxious, just like my mom.
Can't really put my finger. I don't think I take after anybody, to tell you the truth.
Our DNA affects so many aspects of our makeup. Our height, our weight, our IQ, our hair color, whether we'll have hair at all. Our DNA affects so many different variables that unless you're talking about twins, brothers and sisters will be completely different in many ways.
So DNA makes every one of us absolutely unique. You and I almost certainly differ in at least 5 million different ways from each other in the DNA. And for you to be born again, an identical you to arrive, I would say you probably need enough babies to fill the solar system, and that's a lot of babies.
Indeed, determining who we are might seem like the ultimate cosmic crapshoot. But the explanation behind our staggering uniqueness becomes clearer when we look at the sheer size of our DNA. This couple is expecting their first baby. And as any parent knows, trying to agree on a name can be a source of some debate. However, the number of possible baby names pales into insignificance when compared with the amount of information that's contained in their baby's DNA. Imagine these books were filled with the genetic information in your DNA that makes you, you. There's so much of it that written down, it would fill the 564 books on these shelves. And it would take 9.5 years to read out loud. Yes, size does matter.
Well, DNA is an amazing molecule. There's only 2 meters of it, 6 feet, in every cell in your body. But there's a whole lot of cells in your body. So if you were to rush out of the street and be knocked flat by a speeding bus, the DNA in your body, wherever you are, would stretch from that wet patch on the pavement to the moon and back 8,000 times.
But if you think that the vastness of our DNA is the most impressive fact about our body, then hold tight. The story gets even more astonishing as we develop inside the womb. Ask any of our parents, and they'll probably say there is something miraculous about us. And they'd be absolutely right. Making us who we are is something of a miracle. But the story of how we're made is no easy matter. Imagine these triathletes are sperm. In theory, all they have to do is reach the egg. But it'll be an epic journey. When the gun starts the race to fertilize the female egg, 400 million sperm are released. They've been created inside a myriad of loops and coils inside the man's genitals. And that means they have a lot further to travel than you'd think.
I don't know. I think a sperm has to swim probably just a matter of a few inches, no?
15 feet? I don't know.
6 inches?
Yeah,
I don't know.
6 inches.
3 inches. No, 2.
It has to travel from the guy too, though.
Oh, true.
Maybe we should go for 12.
Creating 400 million sperm requires a staggering 547 yards of tubing in the male testes. So just getting out of the male body means the sperm have to travel a full 24 feet to reach the egg. That's more than 4 times the height of the average man. And remember, the poor old sperm is just 0.02 of an inch long. And the liquid they have to navigate through is anything but easy. In fact, the journey of a sperm to the egg would be the human equivalent of a person swimming 167 miles, the width of Lake Superior, but through water as thick as molasses. It's no surprise that by the time the sperm reach the egg, there are only a few hundred still going. Along the way, countless others have died or made a wrong turn. In fact, it's mind-boggling that any make it at all. Fortunately, 1 sperm is all it takes. It's a critical moment in your development. It can take many attempts to achieve pregnancy, and if any other sperm had fertilized the egg, then it almost certainly would have resulted in a different you. 36 hours after fertilization, the egg starts dividing. And after just 2 weeks, tens of thousands of new cells have been created, each one performing an incredibly specific and vital role in the development of the baby.
Not only do the cells have to divide, and divide accurately and divide at the right time, but they also have to migrate and move to the right areas so that one bit can form the actual baby, another bit can form the placenta, which is important in feeding the baby, and other bits can form the surroundings to the baby and the placenta.
By just over 3 weeks, our brain and spinal cord have started to develop, and our heart has started to beat. But we're still talking about a life that's incredibly small. And to show you just how small, we've created this scale model of a 4-week-old embryo out of dozens of seeds. But to match its actual size, we'd only need 1. Because at 4 weeks old, our embryo is no bigger than this tiny apple seed. Assuming our development progresses well, then over the next few weeks, all of our other organs and features will be formed. During this period, our limbs take shape. And as we pass 8 weeks old, all of the organs that make us human are in place.
It's amazing that it happens so accurately and that babies are formed so perfectly by 8 weeks. Obviously, for the rest of the pregnancy, there is an important function in terms of all the organs maturing, all the organs functioning properly so that the baby can make that transition from inside the womb to outside easily and properly.
It's incredible to think our organs are not only in place, but in many cases, they're already functioning. Within a few weeks, our kidneys will start filtering out waste products. And that means from about 14 weeks old, we're urinating inside our mother's womb. which probably comes as a big surprise to many of us.
Wow. Wow. I would say wow. Wow. That's cool.
I would say that's false. Can't happen.
I'd just say that's gross. I don't know.
That's weird, I guess. I would think that was gross and funny. Is that true?
I'm afraid so. And here's another question. Where do you suppose all that urine goes?
Hopefully it's like excreted somehow, right? Because if it's not, it's just staying in there, right?
I guess goes the mother. Whoa, let's see.
It gets fed back out into the mother's bloodstream, and I don't know.
Probably doesn't go anywhere. It probably just stays right there.
Somewhere in the fluid there.
Like all babies, the one in this woman's womb is surrounded by amniotic fluid. It protects and nourishes the fetus, and it's into this liquid that the baby's urine passes. But before you cringe at the thought of our beautiful new life floating in a sea of urine, relax. Our mother's body is constantly renewing the amniotic fluid, replacing it with a clean supply every 3 hours. In fact, if you laid it all out in glasses, it would look like this. In all, the average pregnant mother will produce 1,794 pints of clean amniotic fluid during a pregnancy. Processing all that liquid is one of the reasons pregnant women need to drink more. So if a prospective mother asks you for a drink of water, by all means, make it a large one. The initial development of our fetus is amazing and goes largely unseen.
The baby's heart rate is...
It's only at 13 weeks that our mom and dad will get their first chance to see the life they've created.
You see the beginnings of legs there, and the beginning of an arm coming up.
And this is where things get really interesting. It's usually about 13 weeks before our parents get their first chance to see us developing inside the womb.
He seems to be moving more now and started laughing.
And almost all of them are amazed to see our heart pounding away. Yet it has already been beating for 9.5 weeks. And by now it will already have beaten 11 million times. This amazing organ will run non-stop for the rest of our life.
Although it looks alarming sometimes when we see it beating that fast, that is perfectly normal.
It's hard to find a pump that is more impressive in terms of what it can do for how long it can do it as the heart. It's unbelievable that it's all assembled and works as well as it does, and it's got an extremely finely tuned mechanism that sort of wrings the blood out of the chamber and generates pressure and pumps blood at an extraordinary rate.
Our heart's achievements are even more impressive when we consider the size of the job it has to do. This person is being examined using a slicing CT scanner, the latest in high-tech diagnostic tools. It produces an unparalleled view of the body's internals. And looking at our blood vessels, it's pretty clear our heart has to pump blood around a phenomenally complicated system. But just how many miles of blood vessel are there in your body?
Oh my gosh. I wouldn't have this. Not a clue. 30.
I wonder how many times around would be 1 mile.
I'm totally taking a guess, like 6. I have no idea.
10, 15.
I'm gonna say like 5 miles of blood vessels.
I'd say way more than 5. Somewhere in the hundreds, probably.
No, actually, I think it's more. Actually, I think it's maybe 3,000 miles.
Well, it's a bit more than that. Never mind the big ones. Most of our blood vessels look like this. These are capillaries, which which are just 1/20th the thickness of a human hair. Added up, there are an incredible 40 billion of them inside us, carrying blood to the furthest reaches of our body. That whopping number helps push up the distance of blood vessels in our body to a mind-boggling 62,000 miles. To put that in perspective, your blood vessels, spread out, would stretch around the world 2.5 times.
Well, one of the things that's amazing about the heart, as opposed to many other pumps, is that it all fits into this little 2-fist-sized device. And in a transplant, and with no blood supply, no oxygen, that thing can still organize itself into a collection of cells that coordinates and beats rhythmically.
But if the distance our heart has to pump blood around the body sounds incredible, then what about the volume of blood it has to shift? Imagine the blood in your body was paint. How long do you think it would take your heart to pump enough to paint this entire ship? A month? A year? A lifetime? Incredible as it seems, your heart pumps enough liquid every day to paint this entire ship twice over. In fact, the average heart pumps a whopping 2,113 gallons a day. Over a year, that would amount to 771,382 gallons of blood. Enough to give this ship 730 coats of paint. It might sound like a ridiculous amount, but if our heart didn't pump all those gallons, our bodies wouldn't function at all. We're less than halfway through our pregnancy. But believe it or not, we're already able to detect the world outside the womb. And what we begin to take in will change our lives forever.
You've come for your 20-week scan just now, and do you understand?
By the time of our 20-week scan, we're halfway through our time in the womb. But we're still relatively small, just 6¼ inches in length. However, as with our 20-week-old here, extraordinary transformations are taking place almost continuously in that cozy little space.
Well, this baby looks absolutely lovely, and certainly this baby looks exactly as it should be at this stage of pregnancy.
250,000 new brain cells are being created every minute. By now, we have fingerprints.
See how fat this little baby's getting.
And in the last 2 months, our weight has increased by a factor of 16.
And that's where most of that comes from with babies.
That's the equivalent of someone gaining over 2,000 pounds, the weight of a large polar bear, in just 8 weeks. The 20-week scan is also the first time the genitals can be seen, and the parents can find out whether our fetus will be a boy or a girl.
Would you like to know the sex of the baby?
Not that they necessarily want to know. Our sex is one of the fundamental defining factors in determining our identity. But it's not as clear-cut as you might think. In fact, strip any macho hunk bare, and you'll reveal some very female features. Not convinced? Well, have you ever asked yourself what men's nipples are for?
I have often asked myself that question.
Well, I guess it depends on who you're at, well, what are my nipples for?
Well, we both said right away to bite, but...
I mean, it feels good when you touch them. Well, not when I touch them. I get like a weird sense of doom when I touch my own nipples.
It lets air into the chest.
Just for the air to go out? I don't know.
Maybe it's just biological economy. Rather than make two separate, really totally divergent bodies. They just said, well, just give them both nipples.
Our sex is determined by the information carried in our father's sperm. But it takes a while to kick in. In fact, for the first 6 weeks of life, every boy is developing as a girl. It's only after 6 weeks that the production of testosterone stops the development of female organs and starts the development of male ones. That means even the butchest man in town won't be able to shed all his feminine traits.
But both little hips.
The baby developing in this woman's womb will turn out to be female, and she's already reacting to the world around her. After 17 weeks, our fetus will be able to feel its surroundings and taste the mother's amniotic fluid. And by 20 weeks, it'll be aware of the sound of the mother's heartbeat and the blood moving in the umbilical cord. And these are only the first of the millions of sounds we'll be able to hear and interpret every single day of our lives.
We do know that it hears things quite early on, that it responds to pressure, it responds to sound, and it responds to vibrations. And that happens quite early. It's not something that just happens when the baby is born.
Our ability to distinguish one sound from another is perhaps one of our most amazing achievements, but not necessarily in the way we'd imagine. This is Ben Griffiths. He's one of the fastest drummers in the world, capable of striking 1,060 beats per minute. And it's pretty awesome as he reaches his crescendo. He's hitting that drum more than 17 times a second. It's a remarkable feat that demonstrates the body's speed and control. But nearly all of us can boast a set of bones that move far faster than this. In fact, his record-breaking achievements pale compared to what goes on inside our ear. These 3 bones, the smallest ones in your body, help convert sound waves into electrical signals in your brain. The smallest of them, the staples, or stirrup, is just 1/8 of an inch long. But what it lacks in size, it makes up for in movement. Suspended on ligaments in the middle ear, they are vibrated by sound waves hitting the eardrum. These vibrations are essential to our hearing, and they're incredibly fast. Your car engine will typically spin at several thousand revs per minute, but that's just peanuts compared to your ear bones. They're making a staggering 20,000 movements every second. That's like revving a car engine at a colossal 1.2 million RPM. It's an extraordinary feat. All the more so given that our ear bones do it routinely every second of every day for our entire lives. That's not the only amazing fact about our hearing. We're also able to differentiate between sounds that are fractions of a second apart. Sound travels at about 770 miles per hour. So a sound wave will hit one ear at almost the same time as it hits the other, even if the sound is completely to one side of us.
Nathan!
And yet, the minute difference in time it takes is enough for us to calculate where the sound is coming from.
Nathan!
In fact, we can differentiate between sounds that are just 1/100,000th of a second apart. To put that into perspective, that's like plucking 1 second out from all the seconds that tick by in a 24-hour day. And without this ability to identify where sound is coming from, all sorts of activities, from following a conversation to crossing the street, would simply become impossible. By 28 weeks, our fetus can probably identify her mother's voice, and soon she'll be able to distinguish between light and dark. But that's nothing compared to what'll happen when she's born. Say hello to Sophie. She's just a few weeks old. In many ways, Sophie's totally unique. But you'll have to get used to the fact that she shares her birth date with several other babies. Well, quite a lot of others, actually. Over 250,000 others, to be more accurate. In fact, worldwide, 3 babies are born every second. It's something common to us all. And by the time it happens, we're all big achievers.
2, 3.
By the time each of us is ready to be born, our heart will have beaten 49 million times. We'll each have formed a full set of teeth, and 1 in 2,000 of us will have a tooth already visible. And we can boast 300 bones, 100 more than we will have as an adult. Some of those bones will fuse together during our first couple of years. But right now, the added flexibility we get by having those bones separate is really important.
More. There you go. Good job.
It will help us on the squeeze along the 4-inch journey that leads to being born.
There are very many amazing things about the birthing process. The fact that it occurs at the right time, the fact that the baby and the mother signal to each other and they know when labor is coming on, and the fact that the baby's in the right position and that the contractions push the baby round and get the baby out most of the time. It is an amazing process.
Once we're born, the changes come thick and fast. We'll take the first breath of the 490 million we'll take during our life. But our first few weeks will be dominated by one activity. Whether it's breast milk or formula, feeding will be almost our sole occupation when awake. But how much will our young Sophie consume? Add it all up, and the milk Sophie's guzzled in just the first 2 weeks of her life would look like this. In fact, we'll all have consumed 3 times our own body weight in milk by the time we're just 14 days old. Most of the energy that we get from all this milk, 80% in fact, is used for the development of one essential organ, our brain. And over the next few months, it's going to be assaulted by all sorts of new sights and sounds, tastes and smells. Take young Isadora here. Once anything goes into her mouth, she deploys millions of sensors to answer one basic question. Is it safe to eat? So what's the most important thing you look for in the food that you eat?
I care about how it tastes.
Taste.
Taste.
The taste.
Enjoy the taste.
Well, that's not the answer according to our body. Of the millions of receptors we use to analyze the contents of our mouth, just 10,000 of them are taste buds. In fact, our sense of taste is far inferior to our sense of smell. Nestling at the top of our nasal passage are 2 cavities, each the size of a postage stamp, packed with hairy odor-sensing receptors. About 10 million in all. With 10 hairs apiece, that means there's 100 million hairs packed up there, making it 1,000 times more hairy than the average person's head. And it's all jammed up your nose. It's this number that gives your nose its incredible sensitivity. And where your tongue could only distinguish between 5 basic tastes, your nose can distinguish between 10,000 different scents. That's 100 different scents for every diner in this restaurant. And it's not just the range of smells we can detect that's impressive. Our nasal sensitivity is also astounding. For example, take a green pepper. Your nose is so sensitive, you could identify its smell at a concentration of just 1 part per trillion parts of air. That's like being able to spot a mere 100 blue grains of sand amidst the trillions spread out along this beach. And that ability to sniff out rotten food has helped us humans survive for thousands of years. By the time we're 9 months old, like Isadora here, our eyesight has almost developed fully. In fact, our visual senses are probably better now than our mothers are. And while we could only focus as far as Mom immediately after we were born, now we can take in the sights of the universe. This man takes specialist photos of the night sky. But getting this kind of image requires thousands of dollars worth of equipment. However, given a clear sky, you can spot constellations like this with the naked eye, which is amazing considering how far away they are. This is the neighboring galaxy of Andromeda, and assuming we know where to look, we can spot it in seconds. Not bad for something that's 2.5 million light years, or 150 million trillion miles away. If the sensitivity of our eye is astounding, then so is our ability to perceive color. But how many colors can we actually see?
I would say 2.
300 different colors.
No, 3. I keep changing my mind.
That would be all the colors of the rainbow.
74.
Probably thousands.
No, there's way more colors than that.
40?
That's a tough question. Where do you get these questions?
This paint chart has 1,000 colors on it and stretches for 16 feet. But if you wanted it to reflect what our eyes can differentiate between, then it would have to be 21 3/4 miles long. That's 1.5 times the length of Manhattan. It's that long because our eyes can recognize a total of 7 million different colors, many more than we could ever put a name to. So how does something the size of a ping pong ball pull off this incredible trick? Well, imagine this pin cushion as the retina of your eye, the part that registers light. In reality, it's just 1.7 square inches in area and 1/100th of an inch thick. And it's packed with light receptors. They allow us to detect the faintest light and help us discern the subtlest difference in color. But the 200 pins packed in here pales when compared with the number of light receptors crammed onto our retina. Each of these light bulbs represents not 1,000, not 100,000, but 1,000,000 light receptors. Total them up, and you'll get 131 of them, equating to the 131 million receptors in your eye. And without them, you'd be totally blind. Our visual achievements are merely one of many. And in fact, by the time we're just 1 year old, we have already firmly made our mark on the planet and the people around us. Like young Noah here, our body will have more than doubled in weight, an enormous rate of growth, which is why we'll have spent most of this time asleep. In fact, during our first year, we'll have snoozed for a staggering 5,957 hours, or 248 days, one for each of these pillows. And whether waking hungry in the night, or just demanding a diaper change, we'll have spent a considerable amount of time crying for attention. If each hour is represented by a pacifier, then the total would look like this: 490 hours crying in the first year. Enough to make the sturdiest parent wince. To satisfy our hunger, we'll have predominantly relied on one source more than any other: milk. And we'll have consumed a whopping 560 pints of it by the time we're 1 year old. Enough to fill 1,019 of these baby bottles. All that food will have had an inevitable consequence. In our first year, we'll have produced on average 152 quarts of urine, 86.5 pounds of poop, which will have required the use of 2,190 diapers. But ahead, a new world dawns. As we take our first steps, our reach, understanding, and abilities will take a massive step forward. As long as we don't trip over, that is. Next time, we continue our astonishing journey as we grow up and discover how much air we breathe, how far we will walk, and how much our body has to create to enable us to eat solid food. All startling surprises when we examine our body in numbers.
接下来，第4代梅卡瓦战车、人员装备杀伤弹、铁拳主动防护系统、军事科技的划时代新发明，全新一季新时代武器，接着播出。